So liquid Plumr, we clear clogged drains. So when you think of that, it doesn't sound very sexy, does it? In fact, it might be the most unsexy thing you've ever brought up in your conversation, but you might be surprised. So this is an ad from a recent campaign. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's our Hunky Plumr campaign, and some of you may be familiar with these guys, and you may have seen this ad. So I thought I'd open it up with a little bit of fun and give you a little idea of how we can be much sexier than you expect.
Liquid Plumr Urgent Clear when you need it now.
I heard you need it now.
I only have 10 minutes.
I only need 7.
Oh.
Liquid Plumr Urgent Clear penetrates the toughest clogs with 2 fast-acting gels to leave you satisfied in only 7 minutes, guaranteed, baby. 7 minutes, guaranteed.
So a little surprising there, more than you expected probably. Let's see. So this is our, that was a campaign from our Hunky Plumr period. We've been doing this for about 2 years. And these guys represent each of our products. So we have a hunky guy representing each of our 7 products in our category. And basically, we use this as a television ad. We used it in social media. We did a couple of at-shelf tactics, as well as we featured them on our website. So this was really effective in awareness. We really wanted to differentiate ourselves. But we realized when we were relaunching our website this year that we needed to really dive deeper into education. So we wanted to explore a couple of other tactics that might be able to achieve that in a different way. And that is where Clogged Culprits, our online game, comes in. And actually, to date, 12 weeks in, we've had 2.5 million levels played. So we're pretty pleased with how the response has been so far. So today I'm going to talk you through a few areas. We're going to address the challenge. We're going to leverage insights, talk a little bit about best practices, and give you an idea of how we created our game platform, and hopefully that'll inspire you. And talk a little bit about success metrics, which are always key, and key learnings, and then we'll answer a few tough questions. And at the end, you can have some questions for me, and hopefully they're not too tough. So, addressing the challenge. As I mentioned, we have 7 products, and that is a lot to talk about. And in fact, if you look at them, they all look very similar. So, but each one of them actually addresses a different type of clog. So our job was really to differentiate them and really explain really succinctly and clearly what the difference is between them. And then the big sort of elephant in the room here is the topic. I mean, like I said, talking about clogs is not very appealing. In fact, it brings up images of like standing water, soap scum, perhaps a hairball. Like, it's not pretty. And in fact, our consumers tell us it's the grossest thing they deal with in their day. So, and I can speak from experience. I actually had one this weekend. And of course, the in-laws were in town, so it was pretty important that I dealt with it immediately. And it is, when it does happen, it's top of mind. It's the most important thing on your list. But the reality is, even people who don't have a lot of clogs really don't spend a lot of, or people who do have a lot of clogs don't spend a lot of time talking about it or thinking about it. So our real challenge was, how do we get them to visit our site even when they don't have a clog? How do we get them there so we can market and remarket to them so that when they do and they're running to the shelf on a Sunday evening, as I was, they remember our brand and we're top of mind and they go ahead and choose our product. And then, of course, we want to reward our fans. We know that they have been we have a passionate Facebook following. We have had a lot of really successful promotions in the past and generated a pretty hefty email newsletter list. So we really wanted to give back to these consumers who want to have a relationship with us. And then, of course, we need to leverage insights. Every strategy is really steeped in insights. One of the most important for us was this idea that in this category, there's a huge dissatisfaction. And it's not that the products don't work, it's that they're using the wrong product for their clog. So they are basically not aware of what their issue is, and they're picking the wrong one. And then we also wanted to look at our target, and she really seeks online escapes. She is home dealing with the family, dealing with her, her household. She's really busy managing those things. So when she has a chance, she really wants to have a little moment to herself. She's jumping on social networks. She's on Pinterest. She's on Facebook. And she's also online gaming. And we know that half of gamers are actually women. So we had a great opportunity here. And then we took a peek at some of the things that they are playing, and we thought, well, let's see what we can learn from them. And so we got into pretty deep into these games and then tried to glean some great best practices from them. And that leads me to best practices. So here are a few more considerations to keep in mind when you're planning your own strategy. Value exchange. So when you're in everything you do, you really need to think about the consumer first. You need to think about what really motivates them, what's important to them. And if you do that, then you'll have a valuable consumer. And they'll really appreciate the fact that you know what entertains them and what's meaningful to them. Recognition. It's really sort of human instinct that you want to be acknowledged. Everybody wants to feel good. And if you win a level, if you get an extra life in your game, those are all really great feel-good moments. And certainly braggability. We all want to have a platform where we can really talk about our wins. And mobile and social today are, as we all know here, are very key to reaching your consumer. I mean, you have to think about that, keep that in mind. And then status. So this is an area that we didn't explore in our particular game because it wasn't cost effective for us. But it is important to consider maybe having a leaderboard and thinking about how you can give people a reason to keep coming back, to see their name in lights, to really see how they're comparing against the competition. So then now let's get into the actual platform itself. And hopefully this will inspire some of you who are considering games yourselves. This is Cloud Culprits. It is a HTML5 format. We wanted to make sure it was compatible across all platforms. We wanted to make sure it was so turnkey and intuitive that there were no barriers, that this consumer could just jump in and play. And we also wanted to make sure that there were no passwords, no downloads she had to do, as easy as possible. And as I mentioned, we have 7 products, so we have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of stories to tell. So we created a level for each of our products, so we could really get into those storytelling moments. And as you can see, those cute little icons on the top are not just there for show, even though I love them. They really do sort of reinforce that story. Each of them represents an item that might be found in a clog that this particular product clears. And I know that's a mouthful, but I'll explain it in a second when you see an actual game level being played. And this is also a match 3 game. So that was one of the key learnings we learned, is that that's a simple format that's really intuitive. And to be honest, even after launch, or not after launch, but when we were in testing mode, we were playing it and we realized that it needed to be even easier. So we actually shifted up the format a little bit, which is really important to be nimble like that and be honest with yourselves about what you really think is going to be the best, easiest format. So we'll dive into a little game playing here. We're going to go to the first level. And the first level is our Hair Clog Destroyer, which is a new product. And we put it first so that we could really bring it out of the gates and introduce it to everybody. And we designed it so that you could move the levels around. So depending on the priority of the product, we could switch them around. And we could also remove some or add some as we launch new products, as new innovation happened. So you can see the bottle is actually doing the work. And you may or may not have been able to hear it, but as each points were earned, you could hear a little water going down a drain. So it was sort of unclogging it. So we even thought about the sound. We wanted it to really reflect that declogging of the drain. And then here's an example of, this is the opener. So for every level, we really wanted to educate. So educate was really on our mind throughout this whole process. We featured the product. We put a picture of it, so when they get to shelf, they recognize it. And then we gave a little bit about it, a little blurb about it, and then had each of the icons that, like I was saying, each of those items would be found in a clog that this product can clear. So we're sort of reinforcing when you would need this product. And like I said, this is a hair clog destroyer, so each of those is hair related. And then this is the screen with the actual game screen or the level screen. And as you can see, we reinforce the product again, and then we tell the name and a few points about it. And then we even considered the backdrop. So that image is of a bathroom, which is where you'd more likely find a hair clog. So we really wanted to keep sort of consciously or subconsciously storytelling throughout. And then you get a minimum or a maximum number of plays. And then as you gain points, that clog, that green sort of pipe is cleared. So we really had some fun with that. And then once you finish the level, again, we reinforce the product, give a little blurb about it, and then take you to the next place. And everywhere there are shares, so you can really talk about it and amplify it. And then when I was talking about the value exchange, that's where this comes in. So once you've committed or completed all 7 levels, you're eligible for an instant win. And we did this with cash, because in our experience, cash is king, and with our consumer. And we actually decided to do a small amount of cash. And we found that this is $25. So it's even better to have a small amount, because then you can have more prizing. You have more winners, and everybody wants to win. And then we also included a coupon for a product, because everything that we're doing here is really pushing the product. We want to educate. We also want to drive trial. So this really helped us get product in hands. And it gave us this value exchange in that we're giving them an opportunity to win, to have that moment of success. And then on the flip side, we're capturing their names for our email newsletter. And actually, the experience that we've had so far has been incredible. Our rate of opt-in is twice that of that Clorox average. So we seriously have really moved the needle. I mean, they want to have a relationship with us, which is great. And then, of course, we had to promote it. So we used our Facebook page, did some organic posts. We also bought some advertising on Facebook and did a few promoted posts. And then we did a really targeted ad buy with MediaBricks, which is a gaming network. And so we reached our target where they were playing. And then they had an opportunity. It's basically you get extra lives or extra points if you go over and play our game and then come back. So it was incredibly targeted, and it really helped us drive trial and drive players or plays. And no program's complete without measuring. Our stats we were pretty happy with. So we've had people come back more than 6 times to play clog culprits, average of 6 times. So when we were talking about sticky content, this is sticky. They don't have 6 clogs. This is people coming back to play. And then we've also found that they are spending an average of over 8 minutes on the game. So again, whether consciously or subconsciously, they're learning. They're sitting in that game and playing. And then 66% of players are entering our instant win. So we've had a great response on that. And like I said, double the e-newsletter opt-ins. And then what was really important to me, because this game launched with a new site that we were launching, the time on site increased 6 times. So we've really, really created a reason for people to come, which is fantastic. And of course, there are always key learnings. One important thing to, I think, this audience is that you don't have to rely on social platforms to host social content. We were able to migrate them from Facebook. So we did a Facebook ad buy or a promoted post, and we were promoting it on our Facebook page, and they were migrating over. So we were getting them to come over to our .com, which is ideal, because that's where we can really control the message. We can make it super branded. We can give them reasons to come back to us. We can have them opt into our newsletter. So we really found that was successful. We can control the experience. And certainly media support. No social campaign is successful today without some form of media support. I hate to say it. So we realized that not only could we tap into some really efficient Facebook advertising, but we also found some really targeted digital advertising to help support our campaign. And of course, metrics are key. And one of the things that we didn't do, which would be a great idea for future programs, is to consider a survey beyond the behavioral. So how are we really moving the needle on awareness? How are we creating product or brand awareness? And that leads me to a few tough questions here. More things to think about while you're building your strategy. Is it grounded in insights and strategies? So as I was saying earlier, we really focused on that. We spent a good 3 or 4 months really hammering that out and making sure that this really made a lot of sense for our audience and for our goals. Have you defined success metrics? Not only is that important to your team that's working on this, but also certainly leadership. They want to make sure that we've really made this successful. Do you have a clearly defined payoff for both the consumer and the brand? Oops, what happened? That's okay, I'm almost finished. So do you have a clearly defined payoff for your consumer and the brand? And that's what I was talking about with the value exchange. So are we really giving them something that they want? Do we really understand them and know what they need? and vice versa, or what are we getting in return? What are we doing with this opportunity to really continue to market to them? And then the last one is, do you have the right team in place? And do you have the right budget? So I know these are tough questions to ask yourself, but it is so key because nothing ever costs what you think it's going to cost. So keep that in mind. And certainly the team matters. In fact, we had an issue right out of the gate where, I mean, it was a good problem to have, where people were opting into our newsletter at such a volume that we couldn't handle it, and we were actually having trouble capturing them all. So we had to get our technical team working on the game and our website team talking and figuring out a way to retrofit it so we could capture all those names without having without losing any of them. So it's important to have that, and I think that takes me to the next step, which is actually probably your first step, is in the first inklings of this, when you're thinking about a game, make sure you get the team together. So whether you're working with an agency or your internal team or the team that runs your website, make sure everybody's talking and you've all agreed on what your goals are and what your objectives are, and where, because it's so important to the final game, because you want to make sure that there aren't any hiccups along the way, and that can actually help you really manage your budget better too. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, one thing I do want to encourage you to do is to try the game. So it's Liquid Plumr /Clog Culprits. And no one here is related to me or works for Clorox, so you can all enter the instant win. Hopefully you'll have a good experience and you can tell me about it during a break, and I'd love to get some feedback. So does anybody have any questions? Yes? Like I said, we did a media buy with MediaBricks. And I didn't mention, but we also put it in our e-newsletter. So we sent it out to our existing fan base. And then we reached out to some really targeted media outlets to promote it, both. So, the great thing is in our industry, there's a lot of bloggers who write about promotions. So we got a lot of coverage on those because it is a fun instant win. There were lots of, even though it was only $25 in a coupon, there were a lot of winners. So it did really well there, and that's an audience who's really primed for it. And it actually happens to coincide with our own audience that we were trying to target, so it worked out really well. But then we also position it as a game because it is addictive, and you will find that. I mean, we've had a lot of, over 8 minutes. I mean, people are spending on it. They're coming back more than 6 times, so it's definitely addictive as a game itself. I think it's hard to say. I mean, Facebook is so targeted, but I will say from my own personal experience, I don't know if anyone from Facebook is here, on our promotions, we have had just almost an oversaturation rate in reach as far as repeat. I guess let me take a step back. In the promoted posts, they're replicating so many times with the same user that it almost hits a saturation rate that feels almost like spam. So while I think that really has helped it has been a great driver for us, I still think Facebook needs to figure it out. I mean, this is my personal issue because I got this promoted post 6 times. And I know they wanted to convert me to play, but they promised they have an average of 1.2. And I got it 6. And then my last promoted post, I got it 4. So I think there's something going on there. So I am pushing back on them. But I do think that we did drive a lot of plays out of it. But I would say that the MediaBricks and the media platform, or the gaming platform, made a lot of sense for us. I mean, it's a game. It over-indexes on our target. And it was within a game-playing experience, so it was perfect for us. And it wasn't a huge buy, I will tell you. I can't tell you the numbers, but it was really small. So it doesn't even have to be a huge buy. We hosted this on our .com. So on we just relaunched our website, and I probably should have said that up front. And the way we designed our new website, we actually have all the products on the homepage. So they don't have specific pages. You can check it out, but we wanted it to be on our site so that we drove people to a place that they could learn more about each of those products. So they're all there, though. It was a combination. Like I said, we focused on behavioral goals, but I think, and it was interesting, and I will say that this was our first game, so it was hard to really benchmark anything. We didn't have any benchmarks. So we had to look at what did other Clorox games accomplished? What were similar games doing? I mean, and unfortunately, some of the similar games have 900 million players, crazy numbers, so it was hard to compare. And then we also had this as part of our website relaunch, so some of those behavioral metrics were related to site time, so we we set a pretty high bar, and we're actually really pleased with it. But I think it would be helpful to just look at other similar games and kind of put it together. But anytime you come up with these, you really need to have that so you can gauge your success. And I think going forward, we're looking at year 2. The great thing about this game is it can continue to live. We can change it, we can do things to it, and we can continue to change those metrics.
So are you happy with the results, and how does it
Absolutely.
with the other campaigns that are running?
Well, the email opt-in, double the Clorox average was great. So we feel as a brand that we've gotten some feedback or some great payback from our audience. And then certainly the number of gameplays. I mean, 2.5 million levels played in 12 weeks for a game that's not promoted very heavily has been fantastic. And the time on site, I mean, as far as what we set it up to do, it has blown away all of our expectations. Like I was saying earlier, we really had to dig into our consumer and understand what motivates her, how she plays a game, what's important to her. We want it to be super simple, really intuitive. Like I said, we actually were in testing mode, and I went back and was like, this has to be even more simple. Like, I want it to drag. I don't want it to click. Like, I wanted it to be so easy that she didn't have to think. So we really looked at some other games that were popular in the space and tried to glean some best practices from them. I think in anything you're doing, it's important to look at what your consumer, what they're really interested in and what they're really enjoying, what they find entertaining, and try to replicate some of those key learnings. So look at what they're doing now and look at their current behavior and try to figure out if you can learn anything from that for your particular game or whatever you're doing and whatever the campaign is. Well, it's really meant to live on our site indefinitely. I mean, if we continue to get engagement, I think it's just whether or not we turn on the media support. I would say that we wanted a reason to keep coming back. I mean, that was the real goal. Is like, if you don't have a clog, why are you coming to our site? So it is really addictive, and you guys will find that. So we're hoping that people continue to play. I mean, we could refresh it. We could, if we have a new innovation in product, we'll throw that on there. Maybe we'll consider adjusting some things. And another idea that came up actually the other day was, why don't we use those icons at shelf? You know, the little like hairs, and just how do we continue to use these educational tools and bring them through other things we're doing? So it's very rare that a game leads the charge, but we're really happy to see it's proving to be perhaps that leader. We're really in line with what general consumers are doing. We're about 20% on mobile. And we're across all types of mobile, which is why we chose HTML5, because we want to make sure we could be easy to use everywhere. So we're about 20%, which actually with this audience was spot on, and certainly the consumer averages make sense. Well, I wanted to have some fun up front, so I was like, how am I going to transition into this? I think the big thing is that the Hunky Plumbers were about awareness. We really wanted to stand out in the category. And when you talk about traditional television media, television campaigns, you're really looking at your product within that category and how to differentiate it in that category. Whereas when you go online, you're really looking at content across all categories. You're competing with everybody. I mean, we're talking like that little video of the boy who got attacked by the dog that was on the news all morning this morning. I mean, we're talking about everything you're competing with. So we felt like we didn't need to be limited by the Plumrs as much as they've been really powerful and continue to be a part of all of our campaigns. They'll continue. But we just felt like in this particular instance, it made sense to shift focus a little bit and consider something that was perhaps more steeped in education, that was easier for us to use as an educational tool. And actually, I was saying earlier to Hope, brand managers are always pushing to be like, show more product, talk more about the benefits, all this stuff that as marketers we're often sort of pushing back a little bit. We're like, we have to be, or as PR people especially, we're like, well, let's think about, what's the story, and here we actually completely bought into it. We went all product, and it worked. So we were really pleased with it. Because it was in the right format. It was in a way that people can consume in a fun, entertaining way. We do. We've had, I don't have that number offhand, but it's probably about a third of them are uniques, which is still really significant for us, considering that we already had a pretty passionate fan base, and now we're growing it. So we're really happy with that. And we'll continue to do that, hopefully, as the media buy continues.